Welcome back. I'm Rob Nuttleman, employment attorney, public speaker, and mediator. We're going to be talking about a great topic this week. We're going to talk about some listening techniques to further better communication. So grab a cup of coffee. Let's dig in. When a person feels heard, their brain emits dopamine, and you have these neurotransmitters that are creating different signals within the brain. The dopamine activity occurs in places like the frontal cortex and the amygdala, and all these things are going on in the brain. When somebody feels heard, that dopamine and the other chemicals cause you to calm down, cause us to release our stress and feel more secure. Think of it as, we have different parts of our brain. Some people call the lizard brain, right? That's our reactive brain. That's our fight or flight. And then we have our higher learning or our higher thought processes, our more logical responses where we're proactive and we're making decisions based on logic. By helping someone feel heard, we are taking them out of or making it easier for them to get out of that lizard brain fight or flight. What am I going to do? Into the more productive logic centers in the brain so that we can have more effective communications. So what is a tool that we can use to slow down that fight or flight, get that amygdala to slow down, to have it stop firing as much so that we can have a more productive conversation? One technique is mirroring or active listening. I first came across this when I was studying psychology and working with adolescents in drug treatment facilities, learning about different techniques to help run group therapy sessions. Active listening is a way where I repeat back some of the things that you've said while we're having our conversation. When I'm repeating back what you're saying, I'm not doing it obviously in a mocking tone. I'm not doing it in a way to be annoying. I'm doing it as a way to check in to make sure that I'm listening to you and I'm understanding what you're saying. So, for example, if an employee coworker says, I can't believe we got these deadlines. We're so stressed about what's coming up. You might respond, you're stressed about what's coming up? You're literally repeating back the last few words or even the last word that they said. Chris Voss, in his book, Never Split the Difference, emphasizes that this type of mirroring can encourage others to elaborate and feel more heard or feel more understood than if you just nod your head and say, okay. You're not adding any judgments. You're not adding any of your own opinions. You're literally just repeating back to them what they say. And I do this oftentimes in my practice as an attorney or when I'm acting as a mediator. I want to make sure that I fully understand what the other person's position is. I'm trying not to get into arguments with them about their perspective. I'm just trying to understand. And by repeating back what they're saying, it allows me to also stay focused on what their position is. Again, the overall goal of this is to lower the anxiety level, lower that fight or flight so that we can have effective communication. Because as long as you or I are in that fight or flight, one or both of us are going to be reactive. We're going to be butting heads or we're going to be saying things, acting in a way that's going to be counterproductive. So what are some of the benefits of active listening? It promotes mindfulness and it reduces stress. For me, that's really the primary benefit. It allows us to be fully present in the conversation with the person we're talking with. We're not worrying about what our counter arguments are. We're not worrying about proving the other person wrong. We are showing the person that we are invested in what they are saying. In addition to helping to regulate our emotions and helping the other person regulate their emotions, it also broadens our own knowledge base because we're literally finding out information from them and getting their perspective. The more we do this active listening, the more that strengthens our memory. It's going to increase my ability to recall. It's going to increase my understanding of your perspective, all while lowering that emotional state. It's going to, of course, build that trust. It's going to build that emotional safety, helps people feel valued, understood. It's going to foster that environment that we're trying to create to have an effective, or at least a more effective communication. And really, you hear that saying, what you can't really understand somebody's perspective unless you walk 1,000 miles in their shoes. This is kind of like a virtual walk in their shoes. You are showing understanding and comprehending what they're saying so that you're understanding it on a deeper level. This type of active listening or mirroring can sincerely help resolve the conflict so that we can move on to the next step, which is maybe finding what is our pathway forward. So mirroring, try that, practice that in a couple of different conversations when you get home with your family or with your coworkers at work. When you're in a conversation with them, whether you're sitting around having coffee, whether you're about to have a discussion about performance issues, or you're just going to have a discussion about what somebody did that day, practice your active listening. Repeat back to them what they said and see how they respond. See what that conversation's like. Now, if every sentence they say, you're literally just repeating the last word, that might be less effective than doing that periodically as you're going through the conversation. But practice it. This is a tool, this is a technique that requires practice. Thinking about it's great, but if you just jump into a difficult conversation and say, okay, I'm going to try this tool, having never used it before, you may not know how to wield it as well. The other tool I want to talk about is something called labeling. Labeling is different than mirroring. Labeling involves identifying what you believe the other person may be feeling and or thinking. Um, let's say you're having a conversation with a client and that client's very angry, they're upset, their product was late, it's screwed things up, and they're wanting to yell and scream. You step into the conversation. It's obviously the person's very heated. And rather than fighting with them or pointing out that, hey, this wasn't your fault, you had your own supply chain issues, you say something like, it sounds like this delay has caused you a lot of stress and a lot of problems. What do you think that response is going to be? The response probably, yeah, it's caused me a lot of problems. It's very angry. Okay, maybe they're going to continue on. And maybe after a few more sentences, you build on that. It seems like you feel like you're really put into a pickle here, and that you were concerned about not meeting your deadlines. Yeah, I wasn't. Okay, what do we think's happening in the brain? Well, now instead of somebody fighting, they're hearing that you're understanding their underlying core issues. You're labeling what you think they are feeling and what they may be thinking to create that connection. And notice you have to listen to them and what they're saying. In my experience, I think a lot of people certainly can intuit a lot about what somebody else's experience is or what they're feeling because there's only so many different emotions, there's only so many different experiences, and even though I may not have, again, walked 1,000 miles in your shoes, I've probably been along similar paths, and I can probably draw upon that to draw some conclusions. One of the fears I think that people have when it comes to labeling is, well, what if I'm wrong? What if I say, it sounds like, or it seems like you're very angry right now. You're very stressed out. And the person's like, I'm not angry. I'm just very sure I need to get this done, right? They say it's not the emotion that we've identified. Okay, that's fine. what you've provided is an opportunity for that person to clarify their perspective. What happens when somebody asks you something or says something that labels your feeling and you now have to correct them? Okay, you could get annoyed at the fact that you're having to correct them, but I also suspect it causes you to have a level of introspection where you have to think about, well, wait a minute, is that what's going on? No, it's not. Have you ever had that conversation where you were in an argument or somebody accused you of doing something? And in the moment when you were having that argument, you were adamant that no, that's not what was going on, only to later think about it and realize, okay, maybe there was some of that going on. Labeling can sometimes help identify some of those things that I may not even know what's going on within me. The main focus as far as resolving conflict of why labeling works is it shows that I am interested in what you have to say. I am vested in finding out your perspective, not because I want to argue with you, not because I want to tell you how you're wrong. The person I am being is a person that is interested in hearing what your perspective is. These techniques, again, there are multiple different techniques. These are just two of them. They don't always work, right? There may be an occasion when it makes things worse. Somebody gets angrier. Well, stop doing this psychobabble stuff on me. Okay. Um, that can happen. What we can do is you can go back to kind of step one, check our own emotional regulation. Are we taking that deep breath? Are our shoulders tensed up? Is our jaw clenched? I had a client the other day call a potential new client. This one was an employee who had years of experience with the company and recently had a new manager. And after a very short period of time, this new manager sent an email to the client saying, you're doing these 5 different things wrong, and labeled the email performance issues. Well, this was an employee who'd, again, been there for years, had received exceeds performance all along. This was the first time the employee received feedback that maybe he wasn't performing at the level the company or the manager at least wanted. And the employee's natural response is to want to fight back because the employee did not necessarily agree with what the manager's perspective was on some of the issues. And they wanted to fight on those issues. Over our conversation, I used some of these tools, the labeling. I used the active listening. I said things such as, it sounds like you feel like your job is at risk. He hadn't told me that his job was at risk, but that was, in my mind, kind of obvious that that's what he was thinking. Or it sounds like you feel you're being unfairly criticized. Or I could have also said, it sounds like you feel like this person doesn't have enough experience with you to fully evaluate your performance at this time. All of those things are probably true. And if they're not, it still gives my client an opportunity to explore and have that conversation. And through our conversation, what we decided on a response that the employee could have to the employer is, when you sent this email, first of all, thank you for sending it. It is obvious that this information is very important to you. And since it's important to you, it's important to me. I will tell you, it wasn't easy to hear some of these things because I didn't necessarily agree with all of them, but I want to understand your perspective so that I can ensure that I'm performing at the level you want. Because one of the things that was missing from the manager's communication was the manager said what you did wrong, but the manager didn't say what I want you to do in the future. And in the scale of things, as I read this as a third party, none of the things that the manager was identifying seemed earth shattering. And they all seemed somewhat correctable, but there was going to be the need to get some guidance from the manager on what it was the manager was expecting. We noticed we started off with saying, hey, thank you for sending this to me. Okay, that's interesting. Why are you thanking me for telling you you're not performing well? Well, I tell you, I understand that this is important to you, and therefore it's important to me. You're making that connection. You're labeling, even though I'm not saying it sounds like this is important to you. You're just acknowledging, hey, this is important to you, because I think that that's very important to be able to. start with that's the connection, that's the issue. And then there's an acknowledgement of because it's important to you, it's important to me. Now we are on the same team. And then we created other parts of the conversation about since this is important to you and it's important to me, I want to make sure I fully understand what you want me to do and how you need me to do it. And there's different techniques that we could use for addressing those. One of the things you pointed out was I missed some deadlines. Absolutely. There was this one deadline I missed. I'm not sure on the others, but I think what would help is when I get a project, I'm going to tell you what the deadline is, what I think the deadline should be. If you think that needs to change, just let me know. And, if you think I need to have a different deadline, and I will, if for some reason I think that that deadline needs to change, I will tell you about it. Will that work for you? Now, what the employee's done is the employees not only identified what the issue was, but proactively come up with a solution and gotten the supervisor or the manager's buy-in on this is what we're going to do. This is a collective way we're going to work together to have this move forward. By addressing and acknowledging the manager's perspective, even if the employee did not necessarily agree with it, the employee is able to identify ways to improve the communication with the manager so that they can be more productive going forward. And we just kind of took those step by step, performance issue by performance issue, ways to address those. Sometimes the manager may be the one who's going to come up with what the performance goal is. Sometimes the employee can come up with what the performance goal is. But I think using these tools of mirroring, labeling, coming up with common ground are tools that are going to help you be more effective in your communications. They certainly have been helpful to me. So looking forward to more times. Hopefully you're enjoying this. If you are, please hit the like button, subscribe, tell a friend. All those things are wonderful things. Helps my channel grow, helps the exposure get out there. And hopefully some of the things that I've been talking about will be able to help other people. So thank you very much. Have a great day.